Hello, everybody. Welcome to Table Talk from Liberty Hill Church. Back here with Pastor Joe. I'm Pastor Greg. Still doing okay?
Still doing good. How about you?
I'm doing good. Happy Cinco de Mayo to you.
Hey, muchas gracias, amigo. Feliz Cinco de Mayo.
Yes, and a side of guacamole with that, too.
See. On Taco Tuesday.
Yes, exactly. It's a crazy thing.
Yeah.
All right. So we've got to kind of get an idea of what our schedule is going to be like coming up here. This Sunday will be online only.
Yes.
We'll be honoring mothers in the service, honoring graduates in the service as well. So that's going to be a good thing.
Very excited about that. Taking another step toward getting things back to normal.
Yes, and then the following Sunday is a big day. That's we'll be back to having our regular 9 o'clock and 10:30 services with social distancing.
Yeah. We will do our best to exercise all social distancing protocols throughout the building. We know that means that seating is going to be limited in our sanctuary. We are going to have overflow seating in various places throughout the church. So you still will be able to worship with members of your church family, or if you bring a big crowd with you as part of your extended family, you'll be able to sit together. We're going to try to do our best to make it as comfortable and as wonderful an experience as it can be on the first Sunday back. I know that a lot of people may still be cautious about getting around crowds and being out in public, and we respect that and understand that completely. For those of you that have the itch to get back to normal, then we're almost there.
Yes. One thing that won't be quite normal on that week is we won't have kid church for the rest of May.
Correct.
So May 17th we'll be starting back with regular services, except for no kid church until June 7th.
Yeah, and if everything continues as is, there's no further change in the directives from our state, then on first Sunday in June, we'll be able to return back to normal with full kids ministry operations.
That is going to be a happy day.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, you want to talk about Sunday's sermon?
Let's do it.
All right. So our If series kind of took a turn this week, and so it became But If Not.
Yeah.
And you talked about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and that's their pagan names.
I talked about Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah,
Yeah.
but I had to talk about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego along the way.
Right, yes. And they're the same three guys if you don't...
If you're not familiar with the story, that's good to clear that up.
The Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, that's their Jewish names.
Yes.
And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that's the names, that's their slave names, basically.
Yeah, to give a real quick background, and I'll be brief because I know many of you watching this probably were watching Sunday as well. But the Old Testament book of Daniel contains a story of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and his siege of Jerusalem and overtaking Jerusalem. And in doing so, he took many Israelis back to Babylon with him, mainly the leaders and the bright and up-and-coming stars in Jerusalem he took with them. And in particular, there were three named in the first part of the book of Daniel, and that was Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael. Those were their God-honoring names that were given to them by their parents at birth, and each name is actually a little bit of an expression of praise to God. But when Nebuchadnezzar took them captive, he wanted to change everything about them, and he began by changing their names. And the interesting thing about it is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are actually names meant to honor some of the Babylonian gods. Right. So Nebuchadnezzar was trying to fundamentally change who they were as people and who they were in terms of who they worshiped.
Right. Interestingly enough, on the Hilltop Kid lesson for yesterday, it was about these same three guys, whatever you want to call them.
I thought that was really neat,
yeah.
and I had no idea. And then I saw Miss Sarah's video lesson on. I was like, hey, all right, we got some continuity here.
So God wants us to get this lesson
I guess
somehow.
so, yeah.
I always think that when it comes up more than once in a week, that God really wants us to get that.
He's wanting to make sure we get the mail on this one. Yeah.
Right. So these guys, Nebuchadnezzar had commanded that everyone bow down and worship his statue. And then the but if not that they said was we know that our God is able to deliver us from you because they were about to get thrown into a big fire because they weren't bowing down to the king's statue. And they said, no, we only worship our God. They said, we know that our God is able to deliver us, but if not, we're still not going to worship your statue.
Yeah.
And what a powerful lesson of faith that they said, but if not. That takes a higher level of trust in God to go that way.
A few weeks ago, we talked about the connection between faith and courage, and all courage is faith. And it doesn't matter really what the faith is in. It just has to be faith in something that is so important to you that it infuses you with courage, that you look at something and you say, this must be done, this must be taken care of, this problem must be fixed, and you believe in it with such certainty that it moves you to action. And faith in God can certainly move you to action because you believe that God cannot be dishonored. God must be obeyed. God must be loved. God must be trusted. You believe in a certain set of values so strongly that it leads you to action. In the cases of these three men, they were essentially saying, you have taken everything from us, but you will not take away our God. We choose to honor God. We choose to worship God no matter what you have done to our lives. So they were infused with courage because of their tremendous faith in God. They believed that God would deliver them from the wrath of Nebuchadnezzar and from that promise of being thrown into the fiery furnace. But their belief was not just that God would take care of them and everything would end well. Their belief was also so strong that they said, even if we are not delivered, our faith in God is still greater than this life. So they were able to say, God will deliver us, but if not, we'll go to the grave trusting Him.
Right.
Powerful courage.
Yes.
It was faith. Courage and faith are really inseparable.
There's a reason we like to talk about this history from the Bible. This is such a dramatic, because we can feel the drama of this.
Yeah.
You know, your life's on the line. You worship the king statue, or you basically stand alone. Yeah. And these three men stood when everyone else bowed.
Well, let's take something you hit on there just a little bit further. You said we like these stories because of how they move us. Even if you are an atheist, or even if you are a nominal believer who doesn't believe everything in the Bible is true, let's just take away any supernatural element from the story. The fact that there would be three people who would stand up and defy the king and rise against the crowd and make such a stand based on their convictions is powerful. It's inspiring. Don't miss that.
Right.
This is an example of what happens when the smallest number of people are so certain of their convictions that it changes the course of their lives, and in so doing, they're able to lift an entire nation.
Right.
Don't underestimate the power of one person choosing to do what is good, noble, honorable, and right, what effects it can have on those around them.
Exactly. We can be, when we take a stand like that, we can be an example and a help to other people.
Yeah, at that moment, they were the leaders in Babylon.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
So in our Christian lives, in the life, I mean, I think of Jesus even in the Garden of Gethsemane, he prayed a but if not prayer.
He did.
He said, if it be possible, this pass from me, but nevertheless, but if not, Father, thy will be done. And he didn't get the if he wanted.
No, that's the same kind of courage born out of faith that we see here in these three Hebrew men and that we were talking about just a moment ago. Jesus knew this had to be done, that he had to do what the Father called him to do, that it was necessary. He was responsible for doing this good, and he had such faith and conviction that it needed to be done and that he was the one to do it, that he came to the Father in prayer and said, Father, if it is possible, take this cup away from me.
Right.
But essentially, but if not.
Right.
And he faced it. And there's a good example of one who wasn't rescued from the fire.
Right.
He was not rescued from the cross. He embraced the cross. He endured the cross. But then he overcame the cross.
Right.
Sometimes it's not just rescue from the suffering. It's walking through the suffering, knowing that God's got something on the other side of us that we can't see yet. We just know that He's there.
Right. There have been times in my life where this has really helped me. It's when I'm trying to do my best, and whether I'm doing any good or not, I'm trying to do what I can do for God, and then I don't feel like I'm being highly successful, But yet, as I sit back and look at it, I realize that I'm going to do my best. I'm going to ask God to help me have success in what I'm trying to accomplish. But whether I am successful by my view or accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish, on the other side, God is still going to be there for me, whether it turns out the way I want to on this side or not.
Yeah, I think every one of our challenges that we face in life, we have a view in our mind of what success would look like.
Right.
And we approach a situation or a circumstance and we think this would be the desired outcome. This is what I'm hoping will happen. This is what I'm working hard to accomplish. And so often, like you pointed out, sometimes we may want to do well and we may try really hard, but that doesn't mean we're going to get it right.
Right.
But we have a predetermined idea of success, but that may not be God's measurement of success. The outcome that God has in mind may be totally different than ours. And what's most important is the faith that's leading us to at least take action.
Right.
It's not allowing us to sit back and say, well, what is to be will be, or let somebody else do it. There's still enough faith to lead to action.
Right.
And if we are responsible for doing our part, then leave the results to God.
Right.
Let God arrange what's needed to be arranged on His side of things or in other people's lives. The results are up to Him. The responsibility to act, that's up to us.
Right. And that can give us peace when we realize that the results are up to God. That is hugely helpful to me at times.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be all right to still be good.
Right. Another example of this, I think, from the Bible is the Apostle Paul, who had this amazing ministry going around as a missionary, preaching, and his ministry was very powerful, very effective, and very successful. And yet there was a time toward the end of his life that he spent a lot of time in prison. But as a result of his being in prison, he ends up in Rome, and he is chained to Roman guards as a result of his imprisonment. So Paul is in prison. You say, God, get me out of this prison so I could go back to preaching. That would be really effective ministry for me.
That's what I'd pray.
but if not, and if not led to him having influence on some of the powerful people in Rome, I believe.
Yeah, we never know the situation we're in that we're wanting out of. We never know what that situation is producing.
Right.
Giving that example that you're using, when Paul was in chains and in prison, he also wrote many of the letters in the New Testament.
Right.
And he reached more people in his writings than he certainly would have standing in front of a crowd preaching and teaching.
Yes.
Here we are 2,000 years later, still analyzing his letters, still understanding his theology, philosophy, still admiring the depth and the breadth and the beauty of it and the truth of it. We wouldn't have had those had he not been in that situation that most of us would say, God, just get me out.
Right.
And maybe would have even questioned the love of God and faithfulness of God if He didn't get us out of those situations.
Right. That is awesome to think that how God works through the if-nots.
Yeah.
As well as the ifs, because in the story that you shared with us about these three Hebrew men, the if was God delivered them in a miraculous way that had impact on even the king that put them in the fire to begin with.
Yes. And they had no way of knowing that would be the certain outcome.
Right.
They were trusting that God would do something, but they didn't know it would be that.
Right.
I can't imagine what it would have been like to have been those three men the moment the guards were taking them, the moment the guards were binding them, and then the moments where they're starting to feel the heat of the furnace as they get closer. They're waiting for a miracle. If I was expecting God to perform a miracle, I would have thought it would have been maybe in the form of some divine intervention, that right before I got to the fire, Nebuchadnezzar would change his mind, or one of the guards would say, no, I'll rescue, something dramatic like that. Not actually entering into the fire.
Yes.
Good night. So that was not an expected outcome.
Right.
So I wonder what their thoughts were like as they were drawing closer to that moment, where they thought, this is it.
Right.
But they had made that statement. But if not. Right. So in other words, I'm going to embrace this terrible end, but I'm still not going to compromise. Nebuchadnezzar, you're still not going to own me. Babylon, you still are not my nation. I'm still loyal to God. And golly, You can't really put a value on that type of fortitude, courage, and faith.
Right. In the message, you asked us you asked us some questions to evaluate who we are. I think that's a big key to having that kind of faith is seeing what we worship and who we are and what is so important to us that we're committed to is to define who we are. And these men had defined their life as we are people who worship only our God, only the one true God. And any other God we're not going to bow down to no matter how you threaten us.
And they made that choice before that day.
Right, that's true.
Sometimes we look at crises and we see great heroic figures emerge from that moment, but it's not like the pressure of the moment makes a person strong. The pressure of a moment will reveal what is already strong inside of someone. It's like the old adage, are great leaders born or made? Well, obviously great leaders are born. They don't arrive on the scene any other way. But they're made over the process of time. And it's just that pressure reveals what's been cooking below the surface for a long time.
Right.
There's no such thing as an overnight success. If you look at every person who's an overnight success, you'll see a lot of nights stacked up consecutively where they were burning the midnight oil, working harder, getting better, doing better, becoming better. And then the pressure of that moment revealed what had been going on behind the scenes. For those three men, Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael, they didn't suddenly become men of faith. They had been men of faith. They had been men of integrity. And they had long ago decided what they were going to stand for in life, what they were going to tolerate, what they were not going to tolerate. And that was their moment of where they said enough was enough. In my view of it, they looked at Nebuchadnezzar. They looked at being prisoners of war in Babylon. And they said, you can take our homeland. You can take our families. You can take our future. You can take away our names, but you can't take away our integrity.
Right.
And that was already formed in them. And then at that moment, they said, no matter how many people are bowing around us, no matter what you say has to happen when the music plays, forget the cues that society and culture puts on us. We're not taking our cues from the world around us. We're taking our cues from what is right and honorable in the sight of our God. We will not bow. That moment revealed them. It didn't make them, it just revealed them. If you want to be that kind of person who you're going to be dependable when the chips are down, you're going to be the one standing strong when things around you are crumbling, you decide that now. You don't wait until the crisis hits and then suddenly become competent and capable. You work on that now. Pressure produces that kind of awakening moment where you say, this is what I've been becoming. So if you want to be a but if not person, you have to figure out who you are right now. Are you the kind of person that values such things as loyalty, faithfulness, sacrifice, integrity, truth, justice? You have to decide who you are now. Then you have to decide who you want to become. And it doesn't matter how good of a person you are right now. Maybe you're at a point in your life where you feel like, well, I'm happy with who I am. Well, good for you, but you cheat yourself and you cheat others if you don't say, I can be better. It is not a matter of, well, I love myself as I am. I accept myself as I am, flaws and all. That should be good enough. Well, of course it is. There has to be that grace where we accept ourselves with flaws and weaknesses.
Right.
But if I don't choose to become better, I'm cheating myself and I'm cheating you and I'm cheating people around me. Because if I can become better, if I can do better, then what kind of blessing am I bringing to those people around me? And if I come to a point in my life where I say, I just write out life, I'm robbing people I love.
Right.
Because maybe God has potential in me that I've not tapped into, that I've not shaped yet. And then what a loss to never reach that ability, that competency, that standard that God has put within me to reach. So you've got to choose today to have the idea in mind of this is the kind of person I want to become. This is what I want to be known for. That I want to be able to look at myself and say, I'm the kind of person who stands. Or we end up saying, I'm just the kind of person who bows with what everybody else does, and that's just the way it is. And there's a level of sadness in that because you're not finding out who you are. Mm-hmm. If you're choosing to let the world around you shape you, then you're missing the joy of discovering who you are, who God made you to be. You've got to come to that point where you evaluate who you are, what's important to you, and then you begin to shape your future there. I promise you this. If you become that person who says, this is the kind of person I am, this is the kind of person I'm going to be, you will have a moment in life where you are needed. You will have that defining moment where it suddenly is revealed what you've been working on underneath the surface or behind the scenes for months or maybe years. There will be a moment when it's revealed and you're the one that holds your family together, or you're the one that holds your business together, or you're the one that your friends are looking to for guidance. It will be revealed. But you got to choose today who you want to be in that moment when the pressure's on.
That's a good point. And in that, as I look at myself, or we all look at ourselves and we go, oh, I'm not who I want to be. That's when we turn to God and we say, God, I'm not there. Will you work in me to help me get there? Yeah. And He will.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because ultimately the one to get us where we can be is God, because He's the only one that fully knows our potential. The word that we've used throughout this year here at Liberty Hill is praise. And the idea of praise is not just saying nice things to God or nice things about God. It's aligning our life with Him. It's honoring Him with our intentions, our motives, our dreams, our desires, everything. And if you and I begin to turn to God and we say, I'm not who I want to be, I'm not who I could be, but I know that You're the direction that I need to go in to get there.
Right.
Then you're taking that first step toward Him bringing you into alignment with all that you could be. It has to begin with a commitment, a surrender commitment. I don't know what's the right word there. Maybe it's both. To God, where you surrender your future to Him, believing that He's the best one to get you to where you need to be.
Right. And in with that is as you came to the end of the message, you talked about a little different if that Jesus talked about. Jesus said this, by this all people will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. Doesn't that help define that who we want to be when we think of it that way?
I sure think so. I don't think Jesus could be more clear. So let's kind of take what we said before there, that if we're aligning our lives with God, essentially aligning our lives with Jesus here means that we follow His commandments.
Right.
Okay? So if we're following Jesus' commandments and we're lining our life up with Him, the proof of that is going to be we love one another. The proof of that is not going to be how Christian we look on the outside or how spiritual we look on Sundays. The proof of our alignment with Christ and that we're following Him is going to be how well we love one another.
Right.
If we are loving one another, we're proving that we are His disciples. So the proof of the work in progress is how are you doing on loving other people?
Yes.
Not just loving the people you agree with, not just loving the people that are just like you, but loving even those who oppose you, who are vastly different than you. Loving your enemies, as Jesus pointed out. Mm-hmm. That's showing the depth of your character, integrity, well, even really the competence that we were talking about a while ago. That's the ultimate competence, to be so in charge of who you are that you're able to love an enemy, that he no longer defines you or has power over you to make you feel or act a certain way. You're choosing to love even in the face of pressure of an enemy.
Right.
That's competency.
and that's Jesus on the cross.
That is.
He is being nailed to a wooden cross, and He says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. He was loving His enemies while they were killing Him.
Really even more powerful than Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael going into the fire was Jesus on the cross saying, I'll take it.
Right.
You will not define me. The enemy will not define me. The people that hate me will not define me. The people that crucified me will not define me. I'll go to the very core of death and show that I am defined by my Father in heaven. Powerful faith shown in Jesus there.
Very good, very good. Anything else about last Sunday's message?
No, hopefully everybody stayed awake.
I was awake.
Yeah, bless your heart.
This week I was awake. All right, so this Sunday coming up, we'll be honoring graduates, as we said. We'll be honoring mothers, as we said, and then you'll have a message, but the If series, we've completed that.
Yeah, we finished up If on Sunday, and on the 17th, when we come back together with 2 services, we're going to start a new series on habits, and I'm really excited about that because I'm always looking at how I can get better at habits in my life, and I always have bad habits I'm trying to get rid of. So personally, I'm pretty stoked about what I'm going to have to do to get ready for that series. But before we get there, this Sunday, Mother's Day and Graduate Sunday, I'm going to talk about playing the numbers. Now, I don't know what comes to your mind when I'm talking about playing the numbers, but we're going to talk about the most important numbers in your life that will help you manage your life's plans and goals. This is something that I've been doing for a long time. It's helped me. I haven't mastered it, still working on it, but I can see in my life where it has helped me in certain key areas where I do have a handle from time to time on some of these. And I want to share this with you on Sunday, and I'm excited about what it hopefully can do for all of us.
All right. So we invite you to tune in this Sunday, 9 o'clock. You can tune in on YouTube. Just search Liberty Hill Church. You can tune in on our website, or you can tune in on Facebook Live. YouTube, we think, is the best connection so far for people watching. So we encourage you to check that out, and we'll look forward to seeing you Sunday.
God bless. Thanks.